Welcome to Waking Up. I'm Julianna Forlano in the studio with King Downey. Good morning, King.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
75 degrees outside right now, but it feels like a million because of that high humidity. It's going up to 89 degrees. There's a heat advisory in effect. That's the big news. Isn't that nice? The night there's no shooting. I'm so happy. It's making me very happy. Today on the show, we have Dr. Julianne Malveaux, and we're also going to continue with our coverage of the Working Family Party's Q&As of the candidates. All that and more. Stay tuned. Monday, everybody. Welcome to the program. I'm Julianna Forlano in the studio with you here, helping you wake up.
Yes. It's a good Monday time to wake up.
It is a good Monday time to wake up. It's 75 degrees outside, as I said at the top. It's going up to 89, but there's a big heat advisory in effect for today because of that humidity level. It is at 84%, so I don't know. Wear your swim goggles out there, is what I'm saying. We're supposed to be getting thunderstorms this afternoon. There's a 50% chance. It's 50-50. That's your chance of thunderstorms in this area. So we'll see, We'll see. So last week, I want to get on it because we have so much to go. We have so many things to do on the show, and we're talking electoral politics today on the show. Last week, we brought you a bunch of coverage of Elizabeth Warren, who appeared on the Working Family Parties. They're having a forum, but it's one candidate at a time. Each candidate that they might endorse with their party, and their party has a tendency to be able to, shift the narrative, shift the votes. They have won and helped win progressive victories in even red states. So they do have some power now, which is exciting. And they're having a forum to see which candidate they're going to back, which I'm sure is going to be contentious, given the fact that they have several candidates that they seem to see as possibly fit to help working families, including Bernie Sanders, which is who we have today, and Julian Castro. And we also had Elizabeth Warren last week. She was the first one they had on. So I want to go in and give you some of the things that Castro was saying. We'll start with Castro. First of all, I don't know if you heard this, but Castro has decided that we need to start talking about poor people, which is exciting because most campaigns talk about the middle class. They don't talk about poor people. It's interesting given the fact that, he is the former housing secretary. His economic plan is People First economic plan for working families, and he rolled it out on the same day that he was speaking with working families. This is, it aims at providing relief to working people and also poor people. There's a pair of new wealth taxes that are going to help fund, because they always ask, how are we going to pay for this? The answer to how we're going to pay for this, by the way, should always be the same way Republicans pay for things like wars and walls. They shouldn't even answer the question. They should just say, we're going to pay for this the same way Republicans pay for things.
With the same money
pay
for.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the answer.
Give me a break. And not even get into we're going to take a 4% tax off the estate wealth of the very, very wealth. No, because that just gives the right way. They don't have anywhere to go with that argument. If you say the same way you pay for things, is it, then the end of story. Anyway, the first thing Castro's going to do is he's going to do an inherited wealth tax, which would replace the estate tax and gift taxes with a tax on inherited incomes of more than $2 million, meaning Trump would have had to pay taxes, and Eric will have to pay taxes. And the other one. Castro's team said that a tax would raise more than $250 billion over 10 years, and hopefully we won't be spending it on war machines. Isn't that exciting? You're shaking your head.
$250 billion over 10 years. $25 billion.
250 billion
over 10 years.
That's what he said.
Yeah, that's $25 billion a year.
Yeah, right.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's
it's
nothing.
Something.
Oh, okay.
It's something.
Right. It's something.
You could buy like a jet fighter. I don't know the exact numbers, but it is something. Anyway, the second tax is a wealth inequality tax. It's going to apply to the top 10%. The top 1% of earners under the tax capital income would be treated the same as labor income. That's interesting. So it would be taxed similarly. For sitting around watching your money grow, you would have to pay the same taxes as someone who collects, the garbage out of the subway. That would be good. I like that idea. Mr. Castro also promised to repeal the tax cut passed under Trump's, admin. And to double the child tax credit. I don't know. It's kind of tinkering with the deck chairs on the Titanic, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Here's what he said on immigration, by the way. He wants to make sure you know that he's not just the Latino guy who is only running on immigration. But he also says that he wants to break up ICE. That's, strong words. Words that we can hold him to.
I think, sometimes when some people ask me, they wonder, are you just the Latino guy that is just interested in this issue? And of course, I'm interested in a lot of different issues, and we put forward different policies. But I do have an interest in this issue because I grew up with a grandmother that had come over from Mexico. And like a lot of people who had come from different places, was an immigrant and was able to make a better life for herself and her family. And I know that the immigrants who are coming here today, documented and undocumented, are adding to the forward progress of our country. So I made a decision early on in this campaign that we were going to be bold and fearless. On this issue of immigration, I am not going to criminalize desperation. I am not going to criminalize desperation. I've called for the repeal of Section 1325, which basically makes it a misdemeanor to unlawfully enter the United States, because this is the law that Donald Trump has used to incarcerate migrant parents and then separate them from their little children. I want to guarantee that we don't have family separation in the years to come. And so this is one way that we can do that. People often ask, well, does that...
Got into the weeds there. You'll see when we play from Bernie Sanders. Let me see if I can just flip over and play a Bernie Sanders clip right now about how he is talking about some of these things, that the audience is like all clapping and excited. Castro, that's a good plan, what he's saying. At the end of that clip, he says breaking up ICE, etc.
He's got to have a little fire. Plus, there's going to have to be a little more bite to these plans.
I'm kind of mad. How does he still have an accent? I am closer to the old country by one full generation, and I do not have an accent.
Well, I can't speak
Explain
on him.
it for me, please, people. You
I
can
noticed
call in.
a lot of folks like Gore suddenly had a Tennessee accent when he was running, which he hadn't had for many years. So
I'm going to run in Brooklyn and be like, hey, the people needed the pasta. Am I going to back it up? My family was very upset about, they were not upset, but they were really strongly encouraged to drop speaking Italian. That was like a whole nother thing.
They kept their names, though, right?
Oh, no, they Americanized it.
They did?
They dropped they flattened out some syllables. But yeah,
what?
Everyone's
like
name was
what?
Maria.
I didn't know how Italians did it. I know how other people have done it.
Yeah, my original last name was Tassone, and they just said Tassone. You just flatten it out a little bit.
Okay.
So, but I married someone, Forlano. So I brought it back.
So no Forlan.
I'm bringing ethnic back.
No Forlan for
No
the toddler's
Forlan.
kid.
No. I even spelled her middle name with a G instead of a J.
What's her middle name?
Josephina.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Right. Now everyone knows. I try not to talk about that. Anyway, Castro went on, obviously, to talk about a couple other issues, which are interesting. He talked about the poor and the need to address the issues faced by poor people and not just talk about the needs of the middle class, which is, respectable.
I have tried very intentionally during this campaign to talk about people who are poor. And the reason for that was, first of all, growing up, I grew up in neighborhoods where a lot of the people who were around me, and at different times my family, was impoverished. And so I know that just because you're poor doesn't say anything about who you are as a person, about the worth that you have as a person. Everybody has worth. And then when I was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, what I saw was that a lot of the people who were living in public housing or had a housing choice voucher that people like this administration write off as lazy or something's wrong with them. You can see that in the policy that they just announced, this public charge policy that, if you're on a little bit of government assistance at some point, something's wrong with you. Right? I completely disagree with that. I don't think that just because you're poor that anything is wrong with you. And the policies that I would pursue as president and that I've talked about and put out as a presidential candidate relate not only to the middle class, but people who are poor. When it comes to housing, for instance, one of the things that I would do is that I would create an entitlement program out of the housing choice voucher program So anybody that makes less than 50% of the area median income, they would be entitled to get a housing choice voucher. I would partner that with a push to get source of income discrimination prohibitions or laws put into place in all 50 states so that somebody can't deny you, a landlord can't deny you just because you have a voucher instead of cash or a check. Because too oftentimes there's still a stigma associated with people who have a voucher instead of paying with a check.
By the way, I added that. I'm adding this clapping because see, he was just kind of lackluster, if you ask me. Although, unfortunately, people have to have luster. I always think that he might be a strong candidate for vice president. He's a decent enough candidate for president. Stacey Abrams, by the way, has been approached by several campaigns asking her if maybe she would be willing to be their vice president. She said in an interview this past weekend that she was open to being considered vice president from any nominee, which is interesting. Stacey Abrams was she ran for governor in Georgia. She did not win, but perhaps she did. Remember, there was a lot of voter foul play, shall we just say, voter foul play. She said that she's, been thinking that people have been encouraging her to run, but she has been thinking about for the last few weeks, just not. She said that the best decision she could come to about the best value that she could add and the strongest contribution she could give to the primary would be to make sure that our nominee is coming into an environment where there are stronger voter protections in place. We're going to be speaking after the break with Julianne Malveaux about voting protections and what is going on with that. But I did want to point out that in the news today, just the juxtaposition between Stacey Abrams and perhaps the fact that she is a woman and two other candidates, Beto O'Rourke and John Hickenlooper, both men. Beto O'Rourke is having a slight surge as he takes some stronger stances after the El Paso shooting. He urged people to call, he called President Trump a white supremacist and urged journalists to connect the dots between the El Paso killings and Trump's anti-immigrant language. The problem is he's probably not going to win this election. It's not likely. He's not in one of the top 5 candidates, and they need him in Texas to run against Senator Cornyn in the 2020 election because, in order to take back the Senate, we really need to win seats both in Texas and Colorado. And Hickenlooper, by the way, has dropped out of the race. And he needs to run for Senate there. It's very important. The New York Times is covering this today. You can read a little about it. If he was able to flip the seat currently held by Cory Gardner, which is, by the way, all but mandatory if Democrats hope to have any chance of retaking the Senate, he's going to have to run, and he looks like he could win. So he's not enthusiastic. What's it with the two guys who are like, well, we're not enthusiastic about being anything other than the president, even a senator for the United States. And Stacey Abrams like, you know what? I'm going to hang out and make sure that voting rights are protected in my state. Is that a gender thing? 212-209-2877. I will let you call in and talk about that while we go to our musical break. And then when we come back, Professor Malveaux will be with us. Thanks for listening. 78 degrees going up to 89 degrees. Hot, humid August day. We'll be back. Legislation, of course, is all about shoring up constitutional rights to vote in the free and fair elections. That is something we're supposed to have in this country. Obviously, something that should be celebrated and, in a perfect world, held up across partisan and ideological lines. So why do so many Republicans oppose this bill? Dr. Malveaux is back on Waking Up to talk about the SAFE Act and those working to restore equality of the vote to all Americans. Dr. Malveaux, thank you so much for coming on the program again today.
Always a pleasure, Juliana and King. How are y'all?
Yeah, we're good. We have air conditioning in here, so we are gonna stay all day and sleep. Question for you. So Stacey Abrams said she's not going to run for president. She would be willing to be a vice president, but she believes that right now in her state, the best way she could add value is to make sure that voting, to spend all her time making sure that voting irregularities are, dealt with, especially in Georgia, where she basically she quote unquote lost.
Where the election was stolen.
Exactly. Stolen from her. Yes. What do you think about that?
I'm using Ebonics, stole.
Oh, that's cool. I'm fine with that. See, when you use Ebonics, it makes me want to use Ebonics, so I have to be very careful because I just want to parrot what you say, and I guess people aren't happy with that when I'm white.
I gotcha. Anyway, no, Stacey Abrams is a shero of mine. She's an amazing woman. I would tell your listeners, if you want to see a great interview of her, Google UDC Malveaux, and I had first interview of my television show with Stacey Abrams back in January, and she was cogent then and cogent now, and just really an amazing woman. And what she's doing about, when she was running, they had a hotline, and people were calling and talking about how they've been treated at the polls. At Clark Atlanta University, all day long there was a polling place, but the machines didn't work. So people waited in line, and the machines weren't working. And finally, at the end of the day, maybe about 6 o'clock, 2 working machines were delivered. The polling space had, space for 8 machines. None of those 8 machines were working. This happened, I was with a group, a nonprofit organization I'm part of. We were there right after the election, and women who were coming to basically volunteer to mentor girls, literally everyone had a story.
Oh yeah.
You're supposed to get when you vote, you're supposed to get a receipt. A lot of people didn't get their receipt, which meant there was no proof that they voted or not. There was one woman who had flown in for our event from Europe. I think she was in France, and she had done an absentee ballot. She was supposed to get back something to say that they received her ballot. She never got it. So they just took that from Stacey. They took it. The sitting governor, who was the Secretary of State, which should be a conflict of interest, basically took it. But, we can talk about Georgia, but we can talk about North Carolina. We can talk about any state in the country, really, whether it's red or blue. The fact is that voting Florida. We could talk Florida. Andrew Gillum.
I was down there covering that race, and honestly, it's impossible that Gillum didn't win, and I'll tell you why. Because his that initiative passed, the one that allows felons to clear their records and vote as soon as they have paid their debt to society, and that was highly supported by Democrats. There was some cross-partisan support of that, but mostly supported by Democrats. It overwhelmingly passed, and it's unlikely that a lot of Democrats went and voted for that, but didn't vote
for Gillum. Exactly.
Gillum. So
exactly. So it's but even more than that, the felon voting thing that passed, as soon as it passed, the legislature basically nullified it by saying, now you have to pay your debt to society, but also you have to pay all the money.
Poll tax.
Yeah. So basically, you have to pay to vote.
So, Dr. Malveaux, it goes right exactly back to the point of your recent article, Who Cares About Fair Elections, it seems like Republicans it's not Republicans. Republicans win when elections are rigged. And only then.
And basically, I mean, I was on air with Armstrong Williams not too long ago, and he basically said, all we care about is winning.
Well,
this is a black man, black conservative, and we were talking. In fact, it was on Rock Newman. Rock Newman is a TV talk show host here in Washington, D.C. The show appears on Howard University TV. And we were talking
I'm sorry, I'm stuck. Can you explain black conservative to me?
No.
Okay.
In a word, no.
Thank you. I'm glad my confusion isn't due to some sort of ignorance.
No, actually, let me step back. I know many black Republicans who basically, like Michael Steele is a friend. Michael Steele, former lieutenant governor of Maryland, prominent MSNBC talk show or talking head.
Yes.
Good guy. His thing is, I mean, he's sick of Trump, but his thing is an unfettered economy. So a lot of black, especially male Republicans, are looking at the business side. And from the business side, less regulation is better. So that would,
According to whom?
I can't.
According to them,
I can't explain Armstrong. I won't try to explain Armstrong. But I've talked to Michael extensively over the years about this, and they believe in the Adam Smith model of the economy. So
that is so crazy. It's like believing in a ghost. They're like, well, I think if we, it's insane. It's never worked. It's never made anything good for anyone. It's just not right because of the human condition. I've made this argument 100 times. If you capitalism and business, it trickles down to people. People can be horrible on one side, even if they're good people on the other side, especially when they're fighting over money. And so we need regulation in order to make sure that people are living by the shared values of our nation, or the supposed shared values of our nation that we have all agreed upon in the
here's the flaw in your argument.
Tell me.
Two flaws. The shared values,
right,
one, that we've all agreed on, two. See, we didn't all agree. There are people who do not agree that people should eat. There are people who don't agree.
Maybe those people should be the ones who go back to their homeland. I mean, you know what I mean?
Hey, I'm with you 1,000%, but I'm telling you that when you
exactly
when you sit and talk to these people, they believe in quote initiative and the people who work hard and the people who get ahead. And I disagree, of course, but when you say explain black conservatives, there are black people. Bob Johnson, founder of BET. He's a closet Republican.
He probably doesn't want his taxes raised.
Hello. Serena Williams said to President Clinton, was it Clinton that she said, what about all these taxes? I know her personally. She's a great woman. She's brilliant, and she's all that. But she's rich, and rich people don't want to pay taxes. So that's how you explain black conservatives. They've worked hard. They've gotten ahead. They don't want to pay taxes.
Poor people don't want to pay taxes either. So
nobody wants to pay taxes.
Somebody's got to pay some taxes around here.
Well, look, you want roads.
Yeah.
You want roads.
How about corporate taxes? We could do that
water,
too. That would be all right.
That would work for me.
Yeah,
that would utterly work for me. I think it will work for a lot of people. I think the challenge
is small. I don't mean to bust on Serena, but it's small thinking to be like, I shouldn't have to pay this much taxes. Well, look at the gardener. Is he paying the same rate of taxes that you are? Is he paying more of a rate? And does it hurt him more or her than it does you? No, not busting on Serena, but people with that attitude.
Well, no, and actually, you're absolutely right.
But they don't care about other people. Sorry.
Well, it's not that they don't care about other people. It's that they care about themselves first.
Well, I don't think you can do both of those things. You can't just be like, I'm completely selfish, and you can't do that.
I think that the tax system is inherently unfair.
Yeah.
It favors the wealthy. You saw the little trope this weekend of all these presidential economic advisors running through the talk shows talking about how we're not going to have a recession.
No, everything's fine.
And everything is not fine. First of all, the words that you said earlier about shared values. The challenge is that we don't have shared values in this country. If you have somebody who's trying to rewrite the words on the Statue of Liberty.
Right.
Exactly. Give me a, break.
But, you know, we put up the Statue of Liberty. That's supposed to be our value there, and they're trying to rewrite it in their fascist name. And people
well,
are letting
actually,
them. Their people
let's
are
be
letting
clear
them.
about the Statue of Liberty. It was actually a tribute to enslaved people, and people don't want to deal with that. It was actually a tribute to enslaved people. It was not about give us your poor sanity. That's the only way you can explain working class white people voting for dump.
Oh.
You know, I mean, I wrote a column Saturday. It was late because I couldn't write. I was so upset with this nonsense this man keeps putting out there. So I'm having a hiatus. I ain't going to talk about the MF no more. I said MF. I didn't curse on your air.
No, it's fine.
I mean,
we know what you mean.
You know, I want to talk about public policy, but I want to talk about him because he truly is in the middle of a narcissistic breakdown that his party is perfectly willing to allow, because it enriches them.
Yes, and that's the
when
same
you talk
thing
about
to
you
get
gonna
back
go buy somebody else's country. You know, I mean, we did that. Columbus, we already did that, taking other people's country. Now you want to go buy Greenland?
No, I don't think he wants to buy it. He'll just probably take it. We don't buy things, right? We just take them.
Well, yeah, he steals.
Yeah, he steals. He
steals. Okay, I've already broken my own moratorium.
I was just going to say. I was just going to say.
But we appreciate that. We appreciate that. And this you know, we were going to talk about the fair elections, and it, you know, you kind of made the points that you made in the article in the same through different topics. There are people who do not care because it enriches them about fair elections. So we're back to talking about these values. The Republicans don't value democracy.
No, they just want to win. They just really want to win, and they will tell you that, and they're really clear about that. And we can go back to the post. I mean, I'm still stuck in my research rabbit hole of the post-Reconstruction era and reading about lynchings, which is making me sick. Yeah. But anyway, and so, what you saw was after the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, then states stepping in to take the vote away from black people by whatever means necessary. Mm-hmm. Literacy tests, grandfather clauses, poll taxes, all kinds of things. And then just basically, when they couldn't get their way that way, just kill somebody.
Now, I'm going to ask a question.
Black man.
I'm going to ask a question of Alana. Alana, and this is Alana's our assistant producer here in the studio, and I'm putting her on the spot. But she listened through all the speeches from the Working Family Party. Did any of them speak about elections, you know, securing our elections? I know we can't play like the whole hour-long talk, but so far we've heard from Bernie, or we're about to hear from Bernie, Castro, and Warren. Did any of them talk about making sure that elections are fair, which would do, you know, cover a lot of ground?
I'm kind of remembering something. There was never a specific question about voting.
We need to start pushing that.
Rights specifically, but I think there was one candidate, at least I'm not remembering exactly, but I think there was one candidate at least who, in talking about race, in talking about how racial disparities affect all parts of society and all sectors of our economy, talked about how voting rights do not extend to black communities.
Very good. That's good. Well, we'll have to figure out who that was and give them the credit.
I'll look for it.
No, I appreciate it, Alana. That's wonderful. Dr. Malveaux, who is working to make sure that our voting systems are healthy, and what can we do to support them?
Well, the Democrats in Congress, I mean, notably Marcia Fudge, who Nancy Pelosi actually appointed to lead some kind of congressional commission to do this stuff, but Democrats in Congress are very interested in this. But I also, you know, the Transformative Justice Coalition that I mentioned in my piece, Barbara Arnwine has led that brilliantly. And she and her team, along with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, they have people in most counties really working to make sure that elections are fair. But what you have to, at a local level, who you're looking at is secretaries of state. Secretaries of state are the ones who basically decide the terms of elections, who the machines come from, whether they're paper ballots or electronic ballots and all that. So, you know, we don't pay much attention to secretaries of state. So, I mean, it's like one of those one-off offices like dog catcher. Mm-hmm. But we should pay attention to it. And so people should begin in their states to look at their Secretary of State to say, what are you doing to make sure we have fair elections? Now, I know New York is pretty progressive. We probably don't see much election suppression, as we call it, election suppression. We don't see much of it in New York State. However, in your county, it's working day of the election. You can go and register and vote.
I got scrubbed off the voter rolls, and I think it's because I voted for Bernie in the primary last time, and then I got a card in the thing saying, you haven't voted in such a long time that you need to sign back up to vote. And the cutoff day, and then it was like 2 days later was the cutoff day. So I went back to my old polling place and voted. I guess Sean Hannity would have me arrested for voter fraud.
Yeah, he probably would.
Yeah.
Not only arrested, there's a woman in Texas, a former felon, convicted felon, served her time, debt to society. She was told that she could vote.
Look up her record, see if she's doing a good job here in New York State. We'll get in the weeds.
Well,
so
even if she's doing a good job, she needs to make sure, need to make sure that she knows that people are watching her. I mean, because some of these things,
I don't think people
remember,
are, because no one knows her
no,
name.
because you have to look up her name. Yeah, because people don't pay attention to secretaries of state because it doesn't seem to be such a big deal, but it is a big deal. It's a huge deal, and so that's the story, and that's what we need to be dealing with.
All right, we're going to call her office and see if she'll come on the show. Why not?
There you go.
Let's do it.
That's good looking out.
Yeah, and we'll do like, hey, what are you doing to make sure, blah blah blah, and give her the, and then King can attack her with the lawyer questions.
Well, I'll ask her whether she took any control over the Tiffany Caban election and that controversy.
And
that means it's someplace where she's supposed to step in.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
All right.
We'll hit that box. We have a boxing bell now and some sound effects, Julianne, on the show. We're going to make an intro for you at some point.
Okay, I like that. Well, my theme song is This Girl Is on Fire.
Oh, good. We'll use that one. Excellent. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the program. I appreciate the wide-ranging nature of our discussions. It's just a wonderful...
Yeah, I never stick to my topic, do I?
No, I don't care. I don't feel like we even have to pick a topic. You just come on, and we got 15 good minutes of airtime, and everyone loves you, and it's just wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. Both of y'all have a blessed week.
Yeah, and go listen to Julianne's program on the D.C. affiliate of...
W 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, and soon, if you want more.
Yeah.
Hour and a half.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love how we're
care.
the warm-up act for your show. It's great.
You actually are. You got me going. I get up for you, and I can walk down the street and get to the airwaves.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it. You're listening to WBAI 99.5 FM, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. Yeah, it is a nice warm day out there and humid. We got a heat advisory going on. 75 degrees right now. Fair, sunny, going up to almost 90. There are severe thunderstorms possible on Wednesday, but some rain possible this afternoon. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to have some rain? Just to clear out that humidity.
Cooling rain.
Otherwise, you got to water everything. At the park. Does anyone water the park? No, we just go there and the trees are all begging. We'll be right back after this musical break.
build walls, we'll grow wings. You can't keep us down because we're queens and kings. You build walls, we'll grow wings. You
are we doing? Can we even manage to fix monsters and aliens? Whose man, whose planet is this? Like a movie every day, who's handling scripts? So we gotta do the work, who can handle the shit? More than anything else, we need empathy. Everybody wanna tell everyone what they better be, where they better live. Outside of these walls, we got equality here. You're not invited at all. It ain't even hypocritical, it's just pitiful. Shameless, how you judge a man cause his skin color and name is darker and harder to pronounce for a certain group of people. Now we gotta kick you out. Build a wall around yourself. If you don't see them, they don't count. You can't understand the profit off of them, then they could bounce. But they wanna go low, then we don't go at all. We just fly. A wall is only so tall it can't touch skies. We vibe. We vibe. They wanna go low, then we don't go at all. We just fly. A wall is only so tall it can't touch skies. We vibe. And we vibe. High. And we fly. Yes, we fly. High.
Did you love it? I picked that out special. Chuck Berry doing C'est La Vie.
C'est la vie.
C'est La Vie. Here we are with C'est La Vie. You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Julianna Forlano in the studio with...
King Downing.
You've been quiet today.
Well, when it gets to the sort of primary stuff.
Well, we're talking with Julianne Malveaux. Don't you have...
Oh, you all were on a roll there.
Oh, yeah?
I had some questions. No, I had some questions about the SAFE Act, but we were moving into
We
other
moved off
topics,
the SAFE Act.
So
The unsafe act.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
I will hit that next time. She's great. I would love to have her on every week, and we're going to have that conversation with her. But now I'm going to skip some of these Castro. Let's play Castro on climate, and if it's a snoozer, then we'll just move to Bernie because we never have enough time to cover everything. Here's Castro on climate.
First of all, this goes back, and let me just connect the dots to housing, for instance, and educational and job opportunities. We need to make sure that instead of stigmatizing the trans community, that they're able to fully participate in American life, in our education system, our school system, in housing opportunity, in the ability to get shelter if they're homeless, because as you know, that is one of the big challenges for the trans community. You have a disproportionate number of people who find themselves homeless. That's why it's important to enforce our anti-discrimination laws and to provide greater housing opportunity to folks. And when it comes to job opportunities, I support the Equality Act, for instance, that would make sure that you can't be discriminated against because of your gender identity, so that people have the chance to have gainful employment. This also intersects with race, too. And I want police departments across the country to take this seriously, right? To investigate these crimes, to make sure that they're doing what they can to understand, to be better trained, to work with the trans community and groups that...
This is dropping off with
This is
Castro.
dropping off with Castro. Oy, 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 oy. Okay, well, I do want to point out there's a big difference between Castro and President Sanders. The Working Families Party is just choosing who they're going to support, and just listen to even like the crowd noise behind this when Sanders was. This is Sanders on climate.
Often, 4 years ago, as you recall, when I ran for president, I came up with this radical and crazy idea, and I said, maybe if you work 40 hours in America, you should not be living in poverty. Okay, I know it's a radical idea, I know. But since then, 7 states in this country, look, this is the way I see it. I see a nation of massive disparity, okay? When you have the top 1%, I don't know how you look at that. So,
see, they're clapping.
What is, as Sal undoubtedly knows, because he sounds like a very bright young man, is that the scientists have told us that we have fewer than 12 years in order to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy, or else there will be irreparable damage done to this planet. And you have just seen in the last literally weeks and months, July, the warmest month on recorded history. Terrible heat waves, record-breaking heat waves by far in the UK, in France. Drought in Australia, all over the world. We're already suffering the impacts of climate change. And if we don't get our act together, it will only get worse. So, Sal, let me tell you, it will not be in the first year. It will be a lot shorter than that. All right, we need, by the time we get to office, we will have a very detailed plan. In fact, we'll be announcing a plan very shortly. But look, it could be a 1,000-page plan or a 2-page plan. But at the end of the day, we all know what it's about. Yeah. What it is about is to tell the fossil fuel industry, sorry, you cannot continue to destroy the planet for short-term profits. Okay.
There you go. I did not add that clapping. That was natural clapping. Do you?
Feel the burn.
When you give tax breaks to billionaires and refuse to raise the minimum wage, that's extremism.
Feel the burn.
When you deny the right of workers to come together in collective bargaining, that's extremism.
Feel the burn.
When you tell a woman that she cannot control her own body, that's extremism.
I mean, do you hear that crowd? They really went crazy. No, that was from, obviously speeches that he made. Those clips were from his original run. But he's still out there with the same amount of energy and excitement. So that's, what are your thoughts, King?
Well, I think that he was relatively calm in his last
And
answer. Yeah, but he still has some fire.
Yeah.
And when you talk about taking on the oil companies, that's the number one thing people want to hear. Not that, we're going to have our plan by 2050, because you're not going to be able to do it unless you take on the oil companies.
Exactly. And these other guys don't want, Castro's from Texas. They're going to take on the oil country. You're out. Here's more, Bernie.
Look, this is the way I see it. I see a nation of massive disparity.
Lean into your
When you have
radio.
the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 92%, that is unacceptable. But within that massive income and wealth disparity, there's another disparity. And as you indicated, it is racial disparity. So you got a situation, again, overall disparity, and then within that disparity, you have white families on average owning 10 times more wealth than black families. You have African Americans finding it harder to go to a doctor and having worse outcomes than white families. The truth is, listen to this, in this country, we do very badly compared to other countries in terms of maternal death, on average, okay? And infant mortality, we do badly. If you are a black woman in this country, your rate of death is 3 times higher than if you are a white woman. In a country where for white women, it is bad.
Yeah.
So you're talking about really third world conditions for black women. We need, and I've talked to enough African Americans to know that there is a real concern in terms of health care, that their concerns are not respected, their pain is not respected. So we need more black doctors, we need more black nurses, we need more black psychiatrists, dentists, and so forth and so on. But that ties into making public colleges and universities tuition free, which ain't gonna be a doctor. And it's not just in healthcare, it is in housing, where we still have redlining. So if you want your kids to go to a decent school, you gotta live into a decent neighborhood. But if you can't get into that neighborhood, you got a problem, and we have redlining. It talks about financial services, where African Americans are often end up paying higher interest rates than whites and white businessmen. You're talking about education. This is an amazing thing. And I read this recently. If you left school as an African American, 12 years after you left school, you are more in debt than you were when you left school, when you took out that debt in the first place. You got that? In other words, you're paying off your interest, you're not going anywhere on your principal. How absurd is that? And a large number of African American people default on their loans, which kills their credit rating. And then they got to go to payday lenders in order to get the money they need to survive. All right, so the answer, what we're focusing on is disparities within disparities. Disparities within wealth, in the economy, in education, in healthcare, in financial services. And we will address those disparities as well.
Yeah, so 3 things came to mind. The first one is that he's talking a lot more about race than he has before. He always did, but he's really stepped it up. And the other one is that it can kind of fog people when you say that the median net worth net wealth for white families is 10 times black families. It's actually 13 times, but it's easier to put it in real numbers. So the median wealth for a black family is around $11,000. That's what they own, everything, including a hoopty, some clothes in the closet, some basic things. And for a white family, the median is $130,000. So it's one thing to
they
say
have a car and a house. What's
a car, a house, stock,
Stuff,
other kinds of things. So the half of the white family households have more than 130,000 and half have less, and for black families, half have more than 11,000 and half have less. So we have to break it down in those kind of numbers, and that helps. That's a real serious one.
Yeah.
And I just want to make one observation that what I do now is I kind of go around to those well-dressed black security guards you see in front of the trendy stores with the black sports coat and the black pants and the tie, and I go up and ask them all how much education they have, and half of them have graduated from college. Half of them have some college, and a quarter of them have graduated from college. And the best job they've been able to find is to be very clean and articulate and well-spoken and standing in front of a trendy store as a security guard.
I really like the way he talked about maternal death, both for white women and for black women, and really pointed out that even in the third world, even in the terrible conditions that black women are going through, third world condition. I just had the baby. I'm still in trauma for, it's taken years to come out of the trauma of what happened in the hospital. And it's rough. I think it would be great to also have more black women doctors, especially gynecologists, just saying, because there's something about having a woman doctor if you're a woman. There's something that's difficult to understand if you're a man about what it is to be a woman, and that you can try, but you really, if you haven't had that experience, you really cannot. So it's just wonderful if he can do that. And I love how he linked everything together. I really don't like how they have to ask you a question. Okay, let's talk the environment. Let's talk about racial injustice. Let's talk XYZ. But he links them all together in a really holistic way. The question was about racial injustice, and it went to, we need to have free and accessible college education for people. We have Arthur Schwartz on the line with us, by the way. Arthur comes on every Monday because his show is on at 5 p.m. Arthur, thanks for joining us on the program today. What are you guys going to talk about? Hi.
So today our show is going to feature Hawk Newsom he's the leader of New York's Black Lives Matter, and we're going to talk about, both the Eric Garner issue, and we're going to talk about a plan that they've been pushing for a whole reform of the New York City Police Department.
Oh, that's
so it should be a very interesting show.
Advocating for Justice, 5 p.m. with Arthur. Arthur, we understand you like chocolate milk. Is that the case?
I drink one every show.
Yes, yes, I really like that. I like that chocolate milk. There's caffeine, there's protein.
Protein.
That's the big rumor about you here, is that you like chocolate milk. I wonder what they're saying about me when I close this microphone. We'll see. Hey, thanks for joining us on the program, and thanks for letting me rib you up a little bit. It's going to be such a great show. That's a good one. I wonder, do we ever have police officers on the show? I guess they get enough time on.
They get plenty of time. The only time we have had police officers on are people like DeLacy Davis, who was active in the anti-police abuse campaign over in Jersey. And then there are some from 100 Black law enforcement officers who were outspoken about police brutality.
Yeah,
those guys.
Those people on.
Yeah, we can find them.
Because the other ones, they get enough airtime on everywhere else.
Yeah, all the time. And also, Hawk Newsom's sister has a show. On. Thanks to us. We brought her on, and then she ended up with a show called Black Lives Matter.
Ba-bam. That's what we do here on WBAI. You're listening to Waking Up with Julian and King in the morning. It's Monday, August 19th. In case you're just waking up and wondering what day it is Monday. Get up. 76 degrees, going up to 89. There's a heat advisory out for today because of it's going to be warm, but it's also going to be super duper humid. It's 86% humidity right now. They're expecting some rain across the area this afternoon. We've been talking about the Working Families Party, who has had a forum where they let candidates talk at length instead of just putting them, up in a boxing belt against be what the Democrats are about.
And there's no time to even give any kind of analysis.
No.
You just get 1 or 2 minutes to say something. And the Poor People's Campaign, I think, set it off and set that example.
And
that
that's
worked
so
really
wonderful.
well.
Yes, and it's great that other people are doing this, and the internet and independent media allows for that. These big shows are not where people are getting their major information anymore. Here's Bernie Sanders talking about Wall Street.
When Wall Street's greed, recklessness, and illegal, got it? Let's underline the word illegal behavior, did devastating harm to this country. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, their life savings, and as you point out, especially harmful to the African American community. Massive home loss, home ownership loss. And amazingly enough, the repercussions of that is the people on Wall Street who, in fact, ended up paying billions of dollars in fines. They pay billions of fines. Do you happen to recall the Wall Street executives that went to jail? No. Oh, you don't? Zero. That's right. Just zero. So kids selling marijuana end up in jail. But people who is illegal behavior. This is not bad judgment. This is illegal behavior, destroyed the economy with horrendous impact for millions of people. All right. So what are we going to do? Now, you'll also be interested in knowing that 3 out of the 4 major banks in the country today that were bailed out because they were too big to fail. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
They were too big to fail.
Play the last one.
Needless to say, voted against that bailout. But they are now larger today than they were then. All right, so here is, without going into a long song and a dance on this, we will prevent another Wall Street crash by breaking up the large financial institutions.
Yes, he just said he's going to break up the banks. Hello.
Again, you don't see this. You're not going to see this on TV. You won't read about it in the newspapers. But you have the 6 major banks in this country today have assets equivalent to 50% of the GDP of America. That is over $10 trillion controlled by 6 banks. You know what that means? Think about it. These banks in themselves then own corporations. They determine whether jobs stay in the United States or go abroad. They determine whether CEOs make 400 times what their workers make. That's called power. That is too much power. And in a country where we're seeing increased concentration of ownership in area after area, certainly we got to deal with Wall Street and break them up.
I got to tell you, I'm feeling the burn. We're going to push our show a little bit past the end of it today, thanks to Giovanni sitting in and giving us the permission, just so we can play that last Sanders clip where he talks directly about poverty.
4 years ago, as you recall, when I ran for president, I came up with this radical and crazy idea, and I said, maybe if you work 40 hours in America, you should not be living in poverty. Okay, I know it's a radical idea, I know. But since then, 7 states in this country have passed $15 an hour minimum wage. And the U.S. House of Representatives has done the same. And now we together have got to demand that McConnell allow that vote in the United States Senate. We have taken on Amazon, that, by the way, just in passing made $10 billion in profit last year, didn't pay a nickel in taxes. We work with the workers in Amazon to get them to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We work with the workers in Disneyland and Disney World to get Disney to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So I am obviously committed to not only raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, but to making it much easier for workers to join unions. Yeah. I am perhaps, there may be more pro-union members of the Congress, but I'm not sure that I know who they are. All right, we have introduced what we call the Workplace Democracy Act. And what that says is 50% of the workers in often I am asked, what is the first thing, or what's your highest priority? I never respond to that question because there are so many issues out there. And as a nation, we're going to have to learn how to chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. And I think we can. Whether it is the crisis in criminal justice, whether it's the health care crisis, the education crisis, the immigration crisis.
Don't you think that guy could have beat Trump?
But how do you not put
he
close
could
to
have
the
beat
top
Mr.
of the
China.
list the future of the planet?
Oh, I feel it. I hope he wins. I hope he does beat China. I hope he gets a Democratic. I hope by some miracle, people in the Democratic Party read the article that was out on the Daily Kos talking about how the fighting for Republican votes and fighting for the middle is a sure way to lose. There's been a study. I could talk about it tomorrow. We'll take your calls again tomorrow. I saw a couple callers getting in during Dr. Malveau's time, but hey, she filled it. 212-209-2877. Write that down and put it in your phone so you can call in real quick lack. By the way, tomorrow night, the Working Families is having de Blasio on. Maybe we'll talk about that later in the week. You're listening to Waking Up. Have a good day.
You too. Stay dry.